Well, in Congress, lawmakers of both sides of the aisle are trying to find ways to address the nation's mental health crisis. One California Congress member is hoping a bill she's championed since her first term will finally make it across the finish line. Our Washington correspondent Cassie Simeon joins us now from Washington, D.C. in the newsroom tonight. Cassie, you sat down with Congresswoman Katie Porter. She's reintroducing her Mental Health Justice Act. What's the goal of the legislation?
Well, this legislation would provide funding to communities to allow them to hire and actually train mental health professionals to respond to 911 calls when someone is having a mental health crisis, not only protecting that person, but also police who would traditionally respond to those calls, but don't necessarily have the training needed to keep both themselves and the person that they need to help safe. With the number of deadly police shootings rising, Irvine Congresswoman Katie Porter wants to find a solution to reduce the risks to people experiencing a mental health crisis and to the officers themselves.
When we look at the problem of fatal police encounters, we really can't solve that problem without providing better resources and better responses to people in mental health crisis.
Porter has reintroduced the Mental Health Justice Act, which would provide grants for states and communities to hire, train, and dispatch mental health professionals to emotionally disturbed people who may be a threat to themselves or to others. The House passed the bill in 2022, but it was never taken up by the Senate. Now Porter is trying again.
We're trying to respond in different ways with better counselors in schools and other kinds of better insurance coverage for mental health. But we also need to help law enforcement and give them the kind of responders that they need in a community, and so that we're not putting law enforcement into situations that they're not able to deliver the best quality care.
According to a database maintained by the Washington Post, 20% of people killed by police since 2015 were suffering from a mental illness. Experts say having more mental health professionals to respond to such situations can reduce those numbers.
This is not a new problem. It's not unique to any state. And we've continued to manage mental health by managing crises, often with the legal system instead of the medical system. And again, to compare, it'd be hard to imagine the police getting called because someone's having a heart attack.
Porter's bill outlines an approach to helping emotionally disturbed people long advocated by advocates of police reform. She is reintroducing it as she's locked in a tight Democratic primary for U.S. Senate in California. With the House now controlled by Republicans, its chances for passage are unclear. Porter says she's hopeful a push by lawmakers in both parties to address mental health at the federal level will help get this bill across the finish line and get people with mental illness the help they need.
People want to call, but they're often hesitant to call the police because they don't necessarily want to take the police away from fighting crime, and they don't necessarily want to send someone on a path toward incarceration merely for being sick. So I think having the right kind of responders will also help the community feel like they can speak up and they can help with mental health issues. So.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has endorsed Porter's bid for Senate, is going to be the lead sponsor on this bill in the Senate. But Porter says they are looking for a Republican senator to join them on this piece of legislation. And I want to remind you, Amrit, that this bill did pass last year in the House on a bipartisan basis, just never got a vote in the Senate. So Porter's really hoping that they can build on this momentum here.
Would be a big win for her, especially starting to pull ahead in the polls on Adam Schiff for that Senate race that you were just talking about. Cassie Simeon, thanks for being on top of this. We know we'll be getting more from you soon. Appreciate that, Cassie Simeon in Washington, D.C.